Oh, after going in to find it a third time, they just decided to leave the colonoscopy camera inside. 5 words. Jet fuel can't melt steel. When I held the door for that guy and he didn't even say thank you, I just lost it.
I know you're tired. I know you're hurting. And I wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational.
You can do it!
But that just wouldn't be our style.
Welcome to Project Reclamation, where you rebuild, re-energize, and reclaim your life. We need to be recording this.
I've been recording, dude.
Oh, shit. Okay, well. let's start our conversation about the Ba With A Ba song.
Ba With A Ba. To bang to bit. What are the lyrics of that song, dude?
They are, my name is Kid. And then it goes into ba with a ba, da bang, diggy diggy. Diggy shake the boogie, set up jump the boogie. Ba with a ba, da bang, diggy diggy. Diggy shake the boogie, set up jump the boogie. It's hard to say.
It's to fucking what?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a great song, but what the fuck does it mean?
Well, funny you should ask, because the first verse is, and this is for the questions that don't have any answers.
Oh, I guess I should have just let you keep going.
Should have just let me keep going, and it would have answered.
Yeah,
it's like Louis. Oh, say where you gotta go. La 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 la. It's like some dude trying to chew on his ear.
Sloth love chunk.
Rocky Road.
Oh, jeez. Boom.
My name is JB.
And then you just make up some words.
Yeah. Siggy baba dooda, hey baba gooba. Abba da choo buggy nugget.
What do they call that? Skiffing, riffing? Scatting, there we go.
I'm the scat man.
Jack Black is actually fantastic at scatting.
Dude. He's like the, he's like the unofficial master of scatonomics.
He's a master scatter?
Scatitude
of the master class.
Yep.
Scat
scratch fever.
Ew, gross.
Ugh. It's
like when you get scratched by a cat who had just been digging in shit.
Feces, yeah.
Because
scat also is a name for feces.
Thus is true.
You know where I learned that? Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Bear scat.
It's bear scat. Oh, looky here. It's mountain lion scat.
It's the ring-tailed lemur scat.
It's civet scat. Let's get some coffee out of it and sell it for $500 a pound.
Scat daddle, Kopi Loak.
Yeah, Kopi Loak. Apparently there's some elephant shit coffee too.
Really? Well, I'm sure because they eat all kinds of fun stuff like beans and...
Well, dude, that'd be way more bang for your buck too, because they eat like their weight in fucking plants every day.
Right. Well, it wouldn't be as expensive as Kopi Loak.
That is true.
Because supply and demand, bro.
Have you ever had Kopi Loak?
Scatonomics. I have not. Have you?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably serve somebody some expensive tasting coffee and tell them it's Kopi Loak.
For sure. And then you could just spit on them and tell them it's raining.
You know what I could do is just swallow a bunch of coffee beans, shit it out myself, and call it JB Loak.
I would say that this is going downhill, but I don't think it was ever up the hill. So
no, we're in the marsh.
We're in the swamp. We are just drudging through the swamp.
Yeah, I just lost my boot.
Yeah,
so
I'm trying to avoid snapping turtles and alligators
in a sock foot in shitty marsh swamp. Yeah, ba with a ba, baby.
Ba with a ba.
Da bang,
bang, JB.
But the time bomb's clicking and the heads they hang, and all the gangs getting money and the heads they bang.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. No,
right on.
Not hating. We're not and we're just speaking it. We're speaking lyrics. So
That's
no copyright infringement.
No, we love Kid Rock. I actually do love Kid Rock.
Yeah.
He's entertaining.
He is an entertainer.
I understand that he recently, probably not that recently, moved to Nashville, and I heard your city hates him.
He's everything you would think he is.
Awesome.
Good way
and
and bad.
And a polarizing character who doesn't play by the rules.
Polarizing is an extremely accurate way of describing him. He
doesn't strike me as a...
It's his music. I mean, listen to his music. You know?
Yeah.
It's unhinged a little bit. It's talking about, fornicating and imbibing adult beverages.
Oh, no.
And using illicit drugs. And
oh, no.
Yeah. And there's many raunchy guitar licks and drum fills and pyrotechnics and... it's inflammatory.
And then he has a bunch of softer side of country stuff.
He does. He definitely
I'll
can sit down with an
away.
acoustic guitar and Sheryl Crow and sing you a ballad that'll...
yeah.
Excuse me.
It's all entertaining, though.
That's what... It is very entertaining.
But the biggest part about it is probably that he just doesn't play by the rules, and he's not a puppet.
And he doesn't really give a shit. So
no, he doesn't give a fuck. He has fuck you money.
Admirable.
Yeah.
But he didn't always have FU money, you know?
No, but I mean, into his earning FU money, he continued to live in like a shitty part of Detroit.
Well, and sorry, I just turned up my volume, so you're gonna have a pretty larger waveform,
voice volume, speech volume leveler.
Exactly. Well, and for a long time in Nashville, I think he was building a house, but he lived in a double wide on a big piece of property, but. It's pretty awesome. It was like a camo double wide that looked like a hunting lodge inside.
It was probably awesome inside too.
Oh yeah, you can see it. I think I want to say that Dan Rather did a big interview with him. Maybe you know that show, The Big Interview with Dan Rather.
No,
it's a pretty good show. I think it's on Access TV. I don't know if you guys have that out in the West Coast on Comcast, but I'm sure you do. It's like the music. Rock and roll. TV, they do all the concerts. They do all the, rock legend stuff, and it's actually a pretty good channel. But they have a show on there called Dan Rather's Big Interview, and he interviews a lot of musicians and stuff like that. But there's also, just people, I guess, that Dan Rather finds interesting.
Awesome.
I think he was on there, but he does an interview and yada yada. Check it out.
I'm sure I can look it up on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
The tubes, man. The tubes.
The YouTubes, not the Me Tubes.
Yeah.
Hashtag Me Tube.
Wow.
That now we've derailed.
Completely derailed and pissed a lot of people off. Congratulations. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Yep. So what's going on with you? What's new?
I don't know.
I've been incognito, persona non grata. I don't even know if that's what that pertains to this
libido non grata.
Whoa, no, that's been there.
Yeah.
But
Carpe diem? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of Latin terms. I know.
Carpe per diem.
Carpe per diem. Carpe diem, man. Seize the carp.
Seize the carp. Pigpen. That's such dude. A great movie. I watched that movie. That's on HBO right now. Is out cold.
Is it really?
I've been looking for it. Yeah, it's on HBO Go or whatever.
Going to have to watch it.
It'll take you right back down memory lane to our Blue House on College Avenue.
Oh, dude, what do we used to see? It was Out Cold, Van Wilder, and Super Troopers.
Those were the only 3 DVDs we have, which I'm sure we've talked about this before.
Probably.
Yeah.
Littering and
smoking the reefer. You boys like Mexico.
Such a great movie, man.
It is, dude.
The second one wasn't bad, but
it was. I feel like it'll grow on me, but it's hard to.
It's timeless.
It's hard to follow a cult classic, especially.
It really is.
Like a Hollywood movie, like a big blockbuster. I feel like it's kind of shoved down your throat. Like you're supposed to like it because it spends so much money and they put all this money into advertising and all that stuff. But like a cult classic movie, it's really hard to do a sequel because it's a genuine, like, people genuinely like it.
For sure, man.
You know?
For sure.
And, you know, whatever. I think they waited long enough to do it. So people were just hungry for something.
And I think and it's kind of like, you know, how do you, like, you have to inject enough of the same shit from the first one.
Oh, of course. All the same jokes. Farva's a douchebag.
But then you have to also make it, like, you have to add
contemporary.
So it's kind of tough. I mean, look at, like, Deadpool 2, kind of a similar thing. Like, you kind of tread the line, like, you have to give people what they love, but then you also have to make it kind of new.
Yeah. Well, and there's going to be the purists who are like, that's just stupid because it's just the same movie in a different time, whatever.
Yep, but I'll keep watching them.
Yeah, it's entertainment. Shut up, you watched it. You lose. Yeah. What else? Van Wilder, like they did Van Wilder's The Rise of Taj.
Uh-huh.
I got like 10 minutes into that, and I was like, I'm sorry, dude.
And then they did like The Naked Mile.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, all those National Lampoons, they kind of they exploit to the point of like.
I mean, it is what it is.
Is it better to burn out than to fade away? Apparently, it's to fade away. In the National Lampoon,
they just fade away and then they come back. Though I mean, National Lampoons was kind of like, I would say they were insignificant for a long time, and then Van Wilder was like, oh shit.
Well, they spin off. That's their thing. Is they try and milk every character. I think.
Yeah, but then
they do didn't they do like Christmas Vacation 2, Cousin Eddie, and like.
Oh, probably.
Like an island somewhere, like.
But I feel like a lot of their spin-offs are like lower budget. They don't put them in the theaters. They just, release them to whatever.
It would have been straight to Netflix had Netflix been around when they released it. Yeah, for sure. I get it. No, I understand it. I just dive.
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste my time. Maybe I should. Maybe they're like amazing. Back when Randy Quaid wasn't openly crazy.
Before Randy Quaid saved the world.
That's right. Yeah, dude. Hey, boys, remember me?
Yeah. Fucking Independence Day.
I was listening to the Joe Rogan episode of Bob Lazar and this dude, I can't remember his name, who did a documentary on Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is the guy that...
He's like the UFO guy, right?
Yeah, he's like the actual kind of quote. I use air quotes because I don't know. He's like quote unquote credible UFO guy because he worked at Area S4, which is I think the actual meat and potatoes side of like, I say quote unquote Area 51 because it's not actually Area 51. It's in the Nevada testing, the series of land that is the Nevada test range.
It's like 80% of the state of Nevada.
I know, yeah, which makes sense because it's a barren desert wasteland with a little mirage down at the bottom called Las Vegas.
Yeah, and then another little one up the top called Reno City.
Reno, thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
But what was I talking about? Oh, Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar.
What did I equate that to? Oh, no. Okay, sorry. This was my thing. We were talking about Independence Day, and Bob Lazar was talking about his first time seeing this disc that he go listen to the episode. He goes into the whole experience, all this stuff, the Janet flights, all that stuff, getting to Area 51. But he was discussing the time that first time he saw the disc UFO
flying saucer,
flying saucer, yeah. And it reminded me kind of the scene in Independence Day when Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith jumped in and like sat in the alien chairs, and he was like, "How do I do this?" Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Is this dude for real? Or is he just like quoting Independence Day?"
Or maybe did Independence Day come from some of his testimony?
Well, because I don't know when he came out with his story.
I'm not sure either, but I think it's been a while.
Yeah, but I think he was still there back in the 90s.
Maybe.
Who knows? It doesn't really matter.
Have to look it up.
It kind of leads into our topic today of
what is our topic today, JB?
An overview, just a broad swath paintbrush topic title would be Crisis of Faith. Now,
okay,
it has nothing to do with. Well, maybe it does. It has nothing to do with like faith as we would all think of it, as in like believing in God.
Faith.
Religious faith.
We're talking about faith in general.
Your faith
in. Yeah, but I think we're talking about more like your faith in that what you see on the news is honest and legit.
Your faith and trust in the information that you get on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly.
In your existence, your I don't know what word you would use to describe that. Just kind of your existence. Like you have a set of beliefs in the fact that these textbooks that we learned out of in high school and grade school are telling us the truth.
So I think we're going to take you into the mouth of the rabbit hole today. We're not going to go too deep.
We're at the rim looking in.
Yeah, and we're not necessarily going to go, trying to shove conspiracy theories down anyone's throat, but I think that we're probably going to mention a few. If you listen to this podcast, JB and I are slightly conspiratorial, which I think it's more just that we like to know the truth about things, and
it's fun. It's an alternative. It's an alternative to reality, whether it be truth or not. It's fun to think about the fact that everything that we've been taught. I mean, it's fun for me. I don't know. That's kind of the point of this episode, is that it's fun for me, but a lot of people take that as terrifying, which it can be, especially in certain situations. So we are kind of getting after the fact that how do you deal with information that could possibly take down your whole world belief? For instance, if there's the whole Space Force thing coming out now. All these naval aviators are seeing UFOs. What if the government came to us and been like, we are under attack by aliens, or give me another example, Tim, of something
here's my thing. If they said that, then I might jump to, and this is when you go 2 steps further, I would jump to, oh wow, one common enemy. This isn't a fucking ploy to get us all to bow to a one world government.
Well, but that's from somebody who has explored
that's what I'm saying.
Conspiracy theories.
The further down the rabbit hole you go,
exactly.
It gets kind of crazy, and I have times when I'm like, "Fuck, man! I wish I didn't know what I know, because now I can't. I have to question everything."
Well, I think more of the point of this episode is to be, if you didn't have any sort of interest in conspiracy and any of that stuff, if you were just cruising along in your life, super happy, and someone told you that the narrative for a certain story that had come out in the news was completely false, and the government or whoever was responsible was lying to you, how do you deal with that information?
Well, that's a good question.
That's that's the point of
the follow-up question to that. Is ignorance bliss?
I could agree with that. I think that ignorance is definitely bliss.
But then again, do you want to be blissfully ignorant?
For a certain time?
For sure.
And I guess it depends on how much you want to know, because if you dig down into deep on certain things, you may not want to know the truth because it's not very favorable to you,
And I get that.
Yeah.
So you and I are way far down the rabbit hole, and there's no coming back now, but can you think of any examples of, before you were kind of down that path that you kind of had, was there anything that you can think of that's ever kind of shattered your glass or blown your mind or kind of really given you some sort of a quote unquote crisis of faith?
Not particularly, because I've always kind of been questioning of stuff. I've had sort of this closeted disdain for authority, and I'm not saying I don't follow the laws. I don't pay, I pay my taxes. I do all that stuff. But I've always kind of just sort of stood on the fringe a little bit. And, when certain things come down the pike, it's like, okay, well, this is huge. They're telling me this. And what if it's not exactly that? I don't know. There was nothing that really kind of hit me upside the head. It was like, whoa. And if there was, I don't remember it. The 9/11 thing definitely was a huge formative for all of everybody that's, was in, higher grade school grades to college and above.
Right.
Anybody can remember that. That was a huge, 2x4 upside the head, and then we were told what happened very quickly afterwards. whether or not they actually had the credible information, whether they were just trying to put out a story because of the news cycle, whether there was nefarious agenda, whatever the purpose, we were told a story about it.
Yeah.
And again, we're not digging into the conspiratorial side of it, but we all had to deal with that information, and it's coming out now that some of the, however many years later, 18 years later, some of those details may not have been the actual story. So,
Sure.
people died. Oh my God. Like it was amazing. It's just incredible tragedy.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the reason too. It's like you get this information and, do you take the narrative and swallow it because there was tragedy and it would be disrespectful for those who perished? In my mind, it would be like, well, if there was something that went down that, was not the official story and it was a little bit more, there was malfeasance, there was something going on there, I would want to know that, because that would be more of a dedication to those people who died, justified with the truth. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting though, because, I feel like a lot of people when they hear something, if it's something that they don't want to question, and, I feel like if there's tragedy, especially like if there's like children involved or something, like it's like, if you're questioning what happened, you're not disrespecting any of those people, but I feel like that a lot of people think, they kind of, that's where their mind jumps to. And they're like, oh, well, that could never happen. Like, or, oh, like, the government would never lie. Well, yeah, but then you look at stuff like, and then like Operation Northwoods or Operation Mockingbird, these are things that actually happened, like MK Ultra.
Declassified stuff. Operation Northwoods was a program designed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the, was it late 50s, early 60s?
It was the late 50s in the kind of, the Cold War was just getting ramped up, and Cuba, Fidel Castro had just taken power in Cuba, and Cuba was kind of a hot zone for basically a proxy war between us and Russia.
Well, because, Cuba was under a communist regime, and the Russians were a communist nation, and they were, pals, and they were like, well, only 90 miles. Cuba's a landmass 90 miles off the coast of Florida, so that would give Russia a pretty good doormat to come and, invade us if they so chose. Mm-hmm. That was that was the Cliff's Notes American justification for attacking Cuba and trying to start a war with Cuba, so that they couldn't have, Russia couldn't have the.
They were going to stage an attack on America,
and that was going to be my next thing. Is it was
and they were going to blame it on the
designed a false flag operation. Yeah. Actually, about 600 of them against Fidel Castro, who was the leader at the time, to be able to go to war with them and take them over.
That one happened. Go Google it. Look up MK Ultra. Go look up Project Montauk. Go look up the Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, these are declassified things that really happened where the government just completely lied. So, I mean, if we're talking about, governmental geopolitical stuff, like when a few things that were true, then you start to think, well, what else is not true or true, or so. Yeah. I don't know. For me and
the
JD,
baseball starts to unravel. We
want to question everything.
Well, and that's part of the thing too, is that when you hear this information, it makes you question everything. But basically, we've been digging down these holes of conspiracies, and there's people like Eddie Bravo and all these guys who are like, you need to question everything, which you kind of do, but it's like us invading a foreign country, going in, trying to impose our government and way of life, and then leaving. What do the people who live there, what do they do? That's the metaphor I came up with is, okay, now we're lost in this kind of like truth purgatory. And, it's kind of hard to know what to do with this information. And I think the reason I chose this is because I think we're about to, in our society right now, I think we're about to be kind of privy to a lot of things. And if you start to dig, it's all out there. But I think we're going to start to be privy to a lot of things that are going to do this to people. And I think it's going to start to kind of unhinge people, unfortunately.
I agree.
You know, I mean, I don't know exactly what, but I see it happening, you know, with all these, it's funny because comedians too are the ones who are kind of on the forefront of the quote unquote conspiratorial movement, you know.
It is weird because, I mean, you have, I mean, the most, you know, the person with the biggest platform in the world right now who, you know, he dips his toes into all this stuff, which I think is awesome because it's kind of like an introductory course. And some of his guests, they don't go into this at all. But, you know, a lot of times he does dip his toes in this, and he has Eddie Bravo on all the time. But I'm talking about Joe Rogan. And yeah, I mean, like comedian, you know, JB and I both, we really like Sam Tripoli's podcast, Tinfoil Hat.
Shout out to Tinfoil Hat Podcast. Those guys are awesome.
Podcast. Yeah. And then, I mean, I think a lot of these, a lot of these guys are a little bit, even if they're not actual comics, you know, they're comedic. I mean, you look at like...
And most of them are comics too. I mean, full on traveling, touring comics.
Are any of the guys from those conspiracy guys, they might do some...
I think Gordo was. Okay. He was like an actor and comedian, but then he chose to go full time, which is another amazing. And if you choose to want to learn about any of this stuff, we're naming these podcasts.
Let's line them up. Most vanilla to most insane.
I would say Sofa King podcast is probably the most. I don't want to say vanilla, as in it's a fucking awesome podcast, and they're amazing.
But it's an introductory course.
But it's a survey course in I would say conspiracy. They do a lot of true crime and kind of murderers and stuff like that. This sounds so bad for people who are like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't want to learn about that. People. It is interesting to some people, but they're funny. They're informative. It's a very dynamic three dudes: Dave, Brad, and Brent. So I'd say they were probably the introductory, and then you go all the way to the other spectrum. As far as deep dives go, to like those conspiracy guys, Gordo from those conspiracy guys does like 5-hour episodes on, it's insane. The Denver airport or 9/11 or, the big pharma or stuff like that. You know, there's all kinds of things that, I mean, you can literally make a career on some of these things. I don't know who's going to pay you to do it, but, you can dig in pretty deep on some of these things. And it's one of those things where it's like, if it pertains to you and it affects you, look into it. Or if you just, kind of have a morbid fascination with some of this stuff, right. It's there. Because again, it's like looking into a parent who's cheating on the other parent. Like, do you want to know that?
Right.
I don't know. Like, that's another kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, that's going to completely change your whole viewpoint of your parent. I mean, it's the truth. And so that's kind of one of those things where, if you're happy with your life,
maybe,
and I'm not saying ignorance is bliss is a bad thing, because everybody wants to be happy, right? That's what you ask 100 people on the street, do you want to be happy? Yeah. All right. Well, don't look into conspiracies, because they will rock your whole life force, and whether or not you choose to believe the information is another thing, but there is a lot of information out there that kind of puts a lot of the narratives that we've been fed by, media and the government on their ear.
And I don't think I think we're all kind of on the same page. Like, I just like to look at the facts, and then like the facts
you can make your own.
The facts can trash a narrative, but they don't always give you the actual story. A lot of times they don't, I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but you mentioned 9/11. Like, the facts definitely make the narrative questionable, but I have no fucking clue what really, really, really happened, and that's the case for so many of these types of things. But maybe we rewind this a little bit. I mean, we're going full conspiracy, but there's got to be like other examples of like crisis of faith. I mean, you mentioned one, like a spouse or a parent or something. Like, you could find out something that kind of shatters your image of that person, but do you really want to know that truth? And I don't know the answer to that.
And that's kind of I wouldn't say rhetorical, but the main question here, like,
right.
It kind of makes you, it kind of puts you into a category like, do you want to know it or do you not want to know? And again, the whole ignorance is bliss thing. It's like, is being ignorant the reason for the happiness or the bliss? Can you be happy if you know the truth? You know, like, I think so, but I take a more analytical approach to things and not as much of an emotional reaction, you know, because I know that, you know, honestly, like if we're talking about this, you got to know what truth is. You know, we could do a whole episode on truth, like what is truth, and you know, deep dive into.
Yeah, but see, look at the geniuses. They already bastardized the word truth by calling the people who question 9/11 and other things the truther movement.
Well, of course.
So now that the word truth is now associated with crazy, and that's just another.
The word conspiracy was invented by the CIA in response to the JFK assassination.
JFK assassination, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's the whole thing, and I'm just digging into the whole, you know. Is truth is perception, you know? I mean, I guess it comes down to how deep you want to dive, you know?
Well, I mean, truth is perception to a certain extent, but at some point, truth is truth. And I guess...
Yeah, but who knows the truth?
That's a good question.
You know, and I'm not trying to get, you know, all like esoteric here and like, you know, what's the meaning of all this and cosmic and stuff like that, because, you know,
who's to say what the truth is, considering we're all in the Matrix, man?
Well, does the truth exist in nature? Like, is it something that you can attain if you didn't witness something? Is, you know, I come back to the whole, if a tree falls in the woods and didn't make a sound, did it actually happen? You know, like,
no, because we're in a simulation.
Exactly. No, and thank you for pulling me out of, you know, the the cosmic talk of truth.
Yeah, you were getting a little too quantum for me, buddy.
Well, but it's true though. Like, haha, true. It is true. I don't know. That's where I get to. It's like, okay, you want to know the truth. Well, you know, the version of truth that is maybe a little closer to the quote unquote actual truth, but it may not be the actual truth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think for. I'm just kind of we're jumping around here, but I think for me it's more like I'm just fascinated by learning stuff, like especially like geopolitical stuff, because it's kind of like it makes my decision really easy of where and where not to put in my faith, you know, like,
yeah, for sure.
I think there's been a time when I had faith in, like, you know, and not faith, like, not like some sort of unwavering, you know, subservient faith, but just faith in general. Like, I believed what I heard on the news, you know, I assumed every movie and TV show was purely for entertainment and didn't have any sort of, you know, social programming attached to it.
Yeah, propaganda, any of that stuff.
I had faith that, you know, politicians were fairly honest and that, you know, one side is the other side, and when they're arguing for reason. You know, now I tend to think that they argue like it's like fucking Vince McMahon's WWE, and then afterwards they have drinks and laugh about how stupid the fucking American people are. But that's just me, and I'm a little jaded. But for me, I think it's...
Sorry, small tangent. I didn't mean to kick you off of your thing there, but have you seen Fighting with My Family?
No. What is it?
It's actually a really cute movie. It's got Nick Frost from Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
The Rock is in it. What's his name? Swingers. Vince Vaughn's in it, and it's about this family. It's actually based on a true story about this family from Norwich, England. And they're like a wrestling family. The dad's like an ex-con, the mom's kind of the same way, and they.
So wait, are Vince Vaughn and The Rock? Do they have British accents?
No. So you mentioned the Vince McMahon at WWE, WWF. They're like this family is like they're just dedicated to wrestling, and they have this school in Norwich, and the Vince Vaughn comes through as like a recruiter for the WWE, and these two kids try out for it. I'm not going to give any spoilers because it's actually a really cute movie, but it's a true story.
So does that mean The Rock plays himself?
He does, and
that's cool.
And well, in throughout the story, they're like, you know, we know it's fake, but it's entertainment, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a dynamic that you need to take in. It's like, okay, if you know it's fake, does it impact your life in a positive way, i.e., with entertainment? You know.
Well, yeah, and it's like. I guess for me, it makes it easy to be like, all right, you know what? No fucking politician deserves my faith. And so, like, it is what it is. Like, they're there to do their job. that's cool. You know, whoever the president is, like, I want him to do well, but like, I'm not just going to blindly believe everything that I fucking hear from the government or the news, etc. And it's like, but I see so many people that have so much faith, and like they get so angry because they're just so in the Hillary
so
camp or Trump
polarized. They're like-
camp, and it's like this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing is going on, and you know, half the people are like, oh yeah, this is going to take Trump down. The other half of the people are like, yeah, what about the Clintons, dude? And like, I'm just sitting here like, dude, we're talking about sex trafficking and pedophilia. Maybe they're all fucking bad. How about that, guys? Like, everyone's so excited that the politician they don't like might go down, and I feel like people are paying attention to what
it's
really
like your
fucking
wrestler
matters.
getting written out of the script on
We're talking
WWE.
about, yeah, and I don't want to go too far into this because it's fucking horrible and
terrifying and
depressed,
disgusting,
But we're
and,
talking about
yeah.
children, and people are excited because so and so is going to go down, and I'm like, you guys just don't get it. So I think on
Completely
some
missing the
level,
point.
I think on some level, a little awakening is a good thing. So you just know who not to put your faith in. Like, don't just blindly like
Well,
put
and
energy
you
into
know
some
where to pay
person.
your attention to.
Yeah, like
You know,
like maybe put more faith and belief and stuff in like your family, your friends, you know, something you're trying to go after. You know, we could go down the rabbit hole of religion, but you know, most religions I think are good, and you know, whether it's faith in the community of the religion or the actual faith in the whatever.
well, you're not enriching your life. You're extending your attention to the point where somebody can come underneath your defenses and hit you in the ribs.
Right.
You know,
Right. And-
whereas if you
and-
were to keep your elbows close to you, and I'm just making this boxing analogy, but if you keep your elbows close to you and you concentrate on your family and your everything that can affect you directly, you know, you may know these things, but at least you'll be able to see how they affect you directly and move accordingly. And you keep those that are positive influence in your life, your family, your friends, you know, the people whom you respect. And your life will be better that way. It'll be more fulfilled. It'll be more enriched. Whereas you're not like you're paying attention somewhere across the sea to something that you can do nothing about right there. And that's attention that you've paid. You know, we only have a certain amount of attention.
Yeah.
And that it extends you and it fatigues you in a way, you know, whereas if you were to kind of not turn all the way in, because I think people need to look forward, but if you were to pay attention to the small circle around you, and I think this is kind of the answering the question of what do you do with that information if you get it, is, you know, process it, but also look back what's positive in your life, your family, your friends, your stuff like that, and focus on that, and maybe have a conversation, because some of this information is very traumatic, you know.
It can be, but I like where you're going with this.
You know, where it's almost like use your family and friends as therapy. You know, do you guys think this is true? You know, like, okay, spread out the weight of that information to your friends and family, you know, and maybe they can, you know, most likely they'll probably refute it because of the way that they're at, and they haven't looked in any of this stuff, and that's totally fine. But you know, I guess if you want to look into it, know that the direct correlation to the impact that it's going to have on you is to the, you know, how grounded you are, and
Right.
you know, being able. It's like a doctor. You know, I could walk into a trauma ER, and it's gonna fuck me up, you know, like I'm gonna be not right seeing the things that, say, our buddy Steve does, who's on the third leg of the tripod, sees some shit that
For sure.
will F him up in the head. And I've asked him this, and like, how do you compartmentalize? It's like, well, you just kind of get numb to it. It's a job. And I completely understand that.
Well, I think you focus on the wins, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You focus on what you did positive, you know, the lives that you've saved, you know, and stuff like that. That still doesn't mean that he didn't see this stuff, you know. But I've told, you know, I don't know whatever help he chooses to find outside of that, you know, that because I would need, you know, constant therapy seeing some of that stuff, you know. But he's more grounded in that aspect of it, you know. So if you approach this stuff, if you're like, you know, maybe I guess if you need a little spice in your life, or you're like, okay, I'm bored, I want to know some things, or if it's something that is affecting your life in a way that's like, this just doesn't make sense. The stuff I'm seeing on the news, like, it doesn't make sense, you know. That's a cognitive dissonant thing in your head. It's like, why does this not make sense? You know, maybe that's a reason to look into it. again, like I said, don't look into it if you can't handle what you find, kind of thing,
Right. Well, and I feel like one direction you can go if you do look into it, or if it gets put on your plate, is you can go full blown paranoia, and or kind of like just start questioning everything. And
oh yeah, it's an easy rabbit hole to go down.
I'm there, I think, in a healthy way, but ultimately, I think like what JB said is the best thing you can do with it is just take it for what it's worth. Like, okay, so. I don't think the government's completely evil, but they fucking lie to our faces every day. So I put very little faith in the government, and I certainly put no blind faith in the government. And Sam Tripoli on Tinfoil Hats always says something that I really love. He says, I don't implicitly trust or blindly follow anybody that I don't know personally.
Yeah, it's one of his Ronin rules.
Ronin, dude. Yeah,
another thing that I love that Sam Tripoli puts out is the politicians are just dudes at a party trying to get laid.
Dude.
It's the best analogy.
Yeah.
And shout out to you, Sam Tripoli, because I think you're fucking hilarious and awesome.
I love Sam Tripoli. Dude, did you see his picture on Instagram the other day? Pedos of the Caribbean? Oh my God.
No.
It's like a picture of...
What's up? Sorry.
Let's see. I think I have it on here. Oh yeah. So it's like the cover of, or like the cover of like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, you know what I think I did see? It was on Instagram.
It says Pedos of the Caribbean, and it's got like 4 different people. I'm not going to call them out, who are explicitly linked with this whole thing. It's fucking hilarious. But anyways, yeah, Sam Tripoli, dude, love you.
Yeah, shit's so funny.
Dude, yeah, so that's that's another podcast. If you want to jump into this, go for it. But yeah, for me, I think it's more just something that, it kind of loops back into the whole stuff that we've said a million times, the Serenity Prayer, it kind of like strengthens the whole, like, don't put so much effort into stuff that you can't control. And
absolutely. I think that's honestly the foundation of this is, first of all, look at it as kind of entertainment, started as entertainment, and then do not pay any more attention to things that you can't control. That you can't handle,
Like, the government lies to you. Maybe we went to the moon, maybe we didn't. I don't fucking know. Maybe 9/11 was who knows? But all of that to me just pretty much, and I love looking into this, and it consumes a lot of my life, whatever. But ultimately it comes down to everything I see and hear, from politicians, mainstream media, whatever. I just take it with a grain of salt. If it's something that interests me, I like to do research because I like to know what's what. But ultimately, it just strengthens my resolve to focus on the stuff that I can change, focus on the parts of my life and my community and my circle that I can make better. And I mean, that's kind of since day one, I think. We find a million different ways to say it, but I think that's been our message. Like, just focus on making every part of your life and what's around you better every day. And if we all did that, honestly, the world would be such a better place. And, some of these people who are arguing over Trump and Hillary or whatever, and Nazis and fucking commies and Russians and bots and trolls.
And here's to my point. Here's to my point on that is that, the whole binary political system we have that we, for the vast majority has to be Coke or Pepsi. It's like, there's a reason for that. So, and that's kind of the catalyst of the reason why Tim and I and whoever choose to look into certain things. It's like, well, why is that? And I equate it kind of to using a credit card. People can start using a credit card and get into terrible debt. And that's the same thing about looking into conspiracies. It's like you can start looking into conspiracies, go down a rabbit hole and become a lunatic and, have a mental breakdown. But the vast majority, if you use them responsibly, can actually help you out.
Absolutely.
With points and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I try to look at conspiracies. It's like, okay, yes, I could go down there, be, rocking back and forth in a cold shower with a bottom lip quiver because there's so many like asinine things happening in this world right now that would completely melt my mind. But I choose to look into things just enough so that it can kind of help me comb through some of the bullshit that's shoved at us. And I'm not saying it's all the information we get is BS. It's not true. But there is a lot of it that comes our way. So if you can sort of just kind of look behind the curtain a little bit and be like, okay, that's bull. I think that's kind of where we come into it. As far, and I think that's why we relate so much on the topics and stuff like that. It's because it's like, well, not that we're trying to be elite or better than anybody, but we want to just know that, okay, I see, a story on the news. I know from digging that that's a, propagandish type of thing that
Right.
just aired in every news station across the country for some reason. Like, okay, well, why? And then you can kind of start taking the steps, it's like, and then you have conversations with people who believe in that. And it's like, that's kind of where that dissonance comes into it. And it's like, okay, well,
yeah.
and they believe in it as like dogma. It's like, getting into political debates and geopolitical stuff. It's like, no, this is truth. It's like, okay, well, where did you get that information? And then you just kind of have to, and you're not, motherfucking them or any of this stuff. It's just kind of like, okay, well, if we're going to have an educated discussion about something, I want to know where you got your information.
Absolutely.
And you can usually tell the people who
have no research.
Exactly. They get it from one of the main news sources.
Some fucking shill or Rachel Maddow who makes $30,000 a day working for a company that profits off of wars. So, I mean, come on.
Exactly.
At least look at things that deep.
I'm not saying that I look into this stuff, but I know enough to not believe and have an uneducated conversation with somebody based solely off of emotion. So that kind of steers my human interaction a little bit, and I'll toy with some people sometimes if they get way too over the top with it,
well, and also, like, I don't think it's black and white either. I mean,
it's totally not black and white.
I was born and raised Catholic, and I was like, okay, like I was all in on Catholicism. And as I started getting older, I kind of was just nothing. And then I started like kind of getting like looking more into it with kind of a more analytical eye. And I'm like, look, dude, like whether he was the son of God or not, like this Jesus dude was pretty fucking cool. He walked around in sandals and shit and just helped people. And like, he didn't judge anyone. Like he hung out with like prostitutes and criminals and tried to, help them make themselves better. And like, if he was just a man, he was a pretty cool man. If he was real, that's cool. So then I started like looking into like this religion that I was born and raised on. I'm like, dude, these bishops and priests and cardinals, like they wear all this fancy shit and people have to kiss their rings and the Pope drives around in this Pope mobile. I'm like, dude, that's not anything like Jesus. And I thought the whole point was like to emulate, this Jesus character. And so that's when I started to like, I don't know if I really agree with the whole like hierarchy of this religion, but that doesn't mean that like all religion's bullshit or that there isn't a God.
Well, it doesn't mean that people following it are all rubes either. There's genuine people wanting to do really good things,
Right. Absolutely. And I think most of, especially the main churches, like they don't do all good things, but they do a lot of good things. And, but for me, it was more like, okay, like this just kind of like lets me know, like, whatever, it's there, like, it's cool. Like church is cool for the community. But as far as like, if you believe in God, any sort of God, I think like to me, I'm like, dude, that you can have a relationship with God or whoever you want to whatever believe in, in your living room or whatever. I mean, I think we've probably all heard the whole like sitting in a church doesn't make you religious any more than standing in a garage makes you a car.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like that whole thing.
Well, yeah,
like,
there's people who believe in the Bible as like a nonfiction book, and then there's people who use Jesus as like a moral compass. There's that whole span of people,
Well, and that's another weird thing, dude. There's so much stuff that people reference biblically that's not even in the Bible or that's referenced like once, like barely. And like other things like, oh, like don't eat pork. It's like, well, maybe don't eat pork because when that was written, like they didn't have refrigeration and shit. And if you ate pork, a lot of people probably got trichinosis and died. So like there's a lot of really like, I feel like I don't know. I'm analytical, so that's just me. I'm probably pissing people off right now. But yeah, I think, and then I think like the word Lucifer, I think it's mentioned like once in the Bible. And the same thing goes with the Constitution. Like people always talk about, the separation of church and state. Separation of church and state was referenced in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to somebody. It's not in the Constitution. I'm not saying there shouldn't be that.
It's basically warning of theocracy.
But what I'm saying is that phrase is not in the Constitution.
No, it's not.
But so people will reference these things from the Bible or from the Constitution or whatever that aren't even real. Like that doesn't exist in that document.
Kind of the Mandela effect in a way.
It's a little bit of that, but also just a little bit of propaganda because they heard it somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone said it, and it just, again, just like, I don't know. I mean, if you're willing to and able to handle it, question everything. If not, then don't. But if you end up down a rabbit hole, then just, try to put a positive spin on it and be like, well, what does this really mean? Okay, it means I'm just going to be, I'm going to pay my taxes and all that stuff, but I'm not really going to trust the government. If I'm interested in politics, let's focus on local politics and just focus on the stuff that you
those short-term goals. Like I said, none of us, neither Tim or I, are going to be able to influence any sort of geopolitical movement right now.
Yet.
And not that I'm digging into anything, but if you see that at your local level, your mayor or, whoever did some shady stuff that came out, you have the power to go and influence people to go vote him out.
Absolutely.
That's a small goal. And you may not think you do, but at that level you do for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And even, there's little things you can do. And I'm not trying to be a social justice warrior. I'm just saying if that's the stuff that's going to affect you directly.
Well, that's like an actual social justice warrior or an actual community organizer, someone who's actually like taking action to get something done instead of just trying to get some fucking news time or
polarizing people and keeping people fighting
on some issue that, again, you're parroting because somebody else fucking said it. Like,
it's like a big game of telephone.
Well, yeah, and it just did. All these people are just so many people that we look to or are supposed to look to or whatever for advice or news or morality or fucking expert opinions. They're just fucking Jim Henson characters, and they got fucking strings attached to their hands and legs, and someone's pulling the strings, and you don't even know who that person is.
Yeah, and that was, again, I'll say this again, that's kind of the motivation behind wanting to talk about this, because I listen to all these podcasts and stuff like that, and they're just throwing this stuff against a wall, which is fine. I'm not saying that that's a problem. It's entertaining for me, but with that comes some responsibility in my mind. Being like, hey, this is happening. This is inflammatory. You're not, you should be mad. Or whatever. But then like, okay, well, whoa, what do I do with this? And if you're seeking this information out, it's probably not going to affect you as much, but it still will, if it's a cumulative effect, as you're like, okay, wow. So this is not what I thought it was. That's not what I thought it was. This other thing's not what I thought it was. So that builds up in your mind. So that was why I approached him, and I'm like, hey, this is something that's kind of been stressing me out. Let's talk about, with whoever, the fact that this doesn't have to, be so shocking,
Right. Well, I think it just puts everything in perspective, especially when it comes to, religious figures, political figures, news figures, like they're all just people. They're all just fucking people.
They are all just people.
And I think that if you understand that, then it brings everything to a very more understandable level, because if you put someone on a pedestal as some sort of a demigod or some sort of a full-blown god or just some sort of a, I don't know,
you're setting yourself up for disappointment is what you're doing.
Setting yourself up for disappointment. But if you're like, the president is just a person, the Pope is just a person, all these people are just fucking people.
That's actually a really good lens to kind of start looking at people. And I'm not saying you shouldn't idolize people, but think, hey, this is a person. If I were in that position, what would I do? Or how would I react? Everybody's fallible. Oh my gosh. Like, especially those ones who seek power. They're extremely fallible. And that's what we're, as humans, we're kind of ingrained to seek power in a way. We all want to walk up the ladder. And a lot of people will do some crazy shit to get there. So
well, and they're beholden, whether it's an actor reaching a certain level of celebrity or someone who reaches the higher levels of politics or the higher levels of anything where power is involved. The power structure is in place so that when you get there, I mean, there is this, I'm going to be super negative here. There's a really good chance that those people are beholden to other people.
everybody has a boss.
I mean, it's the whole thing about, you got to sell your soul to the devil, be it the devil, the devil of the industry or whatever it is, to get there. And yeah, you're answering to somebody. And so, but I don't think that's
negative. I just think that's just kind of a realistic viewpoint on it. And again, we're not trying to shit on famous people or anything. We're just saying that it'll make you a more dynamic person that will be able to deal with things that don't make sense if you kind of approach things with that light, like, oh, okay, yeah, that politician just got caught doing whatever. It doesn't surprise me as much because I know he's a person and I know he's in a very volatile situation because he's seeking power in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. And, but you look at someone like Joe Rogan, I mean, he's kind of pioneered building this platform where he has power and he's beholden to nobody.
Dude, he's an anomaly, man.
Cool. I think he broke the mold. He shattered the fucking glass, and that's just going to pave the way for a lot of cool stuff. But it's interesting. I want to jump back to, you mentioned how a lot of like comedians happen to be on the forefront of this kind of like free thinking, kind of break the thought process of the bullshit. And it's interesting because like if you go back to like medieval times or like the Renaissance period, you may have not have heard this, but apparently back then they had kings and shit, and if you couldn't speak ill of the king, otherwise you get your head cut off. But the one person in the kingdom who could question the king, make fun of the king, and question things for a lot of reasons, but mostly because it was shrouded in comedy and humor, was the court jester. So the court jesters are pretty much they were the only ones who could question the king or queen, and they're the only ones who could kind of speak truth to power. And it was probably shrouded in comedy most of the time, but I think that's really interesting because now it's kind of, I feel like we're seeing that a little bit more now again, and it's kind of cool.
Well, what do they say? Get you laughing and then insert the truth. Exactly. I think you're more susceptible to being able to retain and comprehend the truth when you have those chemicals running around your brain from when you're laughing. Another Absolutely. Thing, hold on, you're just talking about this, and I'm gonna go completely screwball here. What if every comedian is beholden to power in some way, shape, or form, like the jester?
Interesting.
That just crossed my mind. I'm not saying I believe it, but if you think about it, back in the king's time, the jester worked for the king because he was there to entertain the king.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. That was my screwball.
Right, but the interesting thing is the jester also amassed a bunch of power because the people all loved the jester. And he was the king's jester, but he entertained the people. So that kind of gave him like a little bit of protection because the king couldn't kill the jester because then the people would be pissed because he was there. Like, they didn't have TV and shit. Like, the jester and the shit that he did and organized was most of their entertainment. Well, so it's like...
Yeah, and his power was garnered by respect, not fear.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Maybe all comedians are just CIA shills.
Yeah, well, duh. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe it's just all controlled opposition.
Nothing is real.
Maybe we're CIA shills. All right, so JB, what are some of like not the super serious ones, but like more kind of ridiculous ones, or just ones that you maybe like would not have believed 10 years ago? What are some of your favorite like weird or kooky conspiracy theories?
Okay, well, the one that comes to mind...
Like, what the fuck conspiracy theories?
The moon landing is a big one.
Yeah, that's a multi-level.
And I'm not gonna to give you what I think, because I think if you analyze it, you'll go back and forth. And I want to believe that we went. But there's a lot of evidence on the contrary. And we're not going to get into it. Look into it if you want. 9/11's a big one. Not that it didn't happen, but
do you have any ones that are less deep?
Shoot, I don't know, man. Well, give me an example. I'm trying to think.
I was kind of thinking about the weaponizing pheromones and trying to turn people gay with like gay bombs.
Oh yeah, you know what? After the whole after looking into Northwoods, I put nothing past the.
Oh no, that one. No, that one was real.
No, I know
for sure.
It
never happened, but they tried to do it. Or
someone thought that up and put it into a memorandum that circulated the halls of power.
The Canadian government invented a gaydar.
Yeah.
Like it was a machine that it looked really similar to, what is that Scientology thing that they use?
Oh, the e-meter. Yeah.
Yeah. It looked really similar to the e-meter, but supposedly it could tell if someone was gay. What are some other weird ones? Oh, they poisoned a bunch of alcohol during Prohibition, so it would kill the people who bought it.
Dude, so I just heard something about that the other day that had nothing to do with morality. It was the fact that the big oil was trying to squash the fact that squash the advancement of alcohol as a fuel.
Oh, well, that doesn't surprise me for a second.
So you couldn't like literally couldn't produce alcohol in any way, shape, or form.
That doesn't surprise me for a second, dude.
And especially during the Great Depression times, like people were seriously looking for some booze.
Doesn't surprise me for a second. I would say it's a deep one, but MK Ultra is fun. Edgewood's fun. I don't mean fun in like the actual fun word, but Project Montauk. If you ever watched Stranger Things, that's what that's based on. What are some other interesting ones?
Well, and here's an interesting thing. If you go through your life and you wonder why you do things, like why is Facebook taking over everybody's life? And this is kind of a parallel why you should look into something, because we are all just these like lemmings these days. Like we all have an iPhone, we all have a Facebook account, most of us have an Instagram account, like all this stuff. Like why do we do that? Why do we feel the need? And looking into some of this stuff may shed some light on that question. Not necessarily. I mean, you can dig deep under the reasons why whoever is doing this wants us to have these things. Or you could just go along thinking, oh, it's just human nature. We all want to, exist and do all this stuff. But why?
Again, I mean, I think there's definitely something to them wanting us to be distracted and be lemmings, and they want to collect all of our fucking information and listen to our conversations. And, I think Snapchat was just developed so that they could capture all of our fucking facial shit and then whatever. But knowing all that doesn't I could go down like, oh, well, fuck everything. But I just think like, no, but there's still a bunch of cool technology here. So I'm just going to use it for what it's good for. Just know some of these things, like they're probably listening to you. I don't know.
Yeah, and knowing that may breed some self-censorship, and that may be
for sure
the reason, but maybe don't be doing shady shit. I don't know.
Yeah, or just don't do it with your phone. Whatever. I don't know.
We're gonna turn everybody into Mel Gibson from Conspiracy Theory.
But he was right, though.
I know. Line your house with LEDs, turn it into a Faraday cage to eliminate any sort of RF transmission, and unplug all your power. Basically, live off the grid.
Enemy of the State with
with Will Smith,
Gene Hackman, and Will Smith. Yeah,
they had those big lollipop-looking transmitters and stuff like that, like sticker stuck in a shoe. No, now we voluntarily give everybody that information by having a phone in our pocket 24/7 and sleeping next to it.
And just pay attention to stuff. I mean, not that the government hasn't been like spewing propaganda at their citizens for years and years and years, but when one of the last bills that was passed when Obama was president, it didn't have anything to do with propaganda, but they slid in something that basically legalized propaganda, so the government can just straight up lie, and now it's legal, which they were doing already, but it was illegal. Just pay attention and just don't. Here's
kind of my end all take all of this thing.
Yeah.
You hear this term woke. And again, I think that's kind of a planned opposition type thing, but I wouldn't promote being woke because I think that sounds stupid. Just be a little bit more aware. You're driving down the road. You're not just looking at the lines on the road, or the car in front of you. You're looking in your mirrors. You're looking behind you. You're paying attention.
Head on a swivel.
Just do that, because it's gonna keep you from bouncing around, and getting hurt. Just pay a little bit more attention. That's all we're trying to help you do here. And that's the positive, uplifting side of this whole episode. I know we kind of brazed on some things that can be very traumatic to your mind, and information that you may not want to know about, and that's totally fine.
it's good information, though.
It's very good information, and it can only help you be a better person if you are a little bit more aware of your surroundings. It's like walking down a mall. Have you ever walked through a mall these days? I know there's not many left, or an airport or anything like that. Like, people are they just have their blinders on.
Oh,
and I know I'm painting society with a broad brush here, but it's frustrating because it's like, there's a certain walkway and this person's walking down the middle of it. It's like, okay, that's fine, but just be a little bit more considerate, like, hey, maybe I should move over so that if people are walking behind me, they can get by me,
Right.
Just be a better person in that regard. If it's just that, just be more aware of your surroundings physically, and I think that'll kind of start the spark of whatever's negative it'll turn us that other direction. And I'm not saying that society is bad. We live in an amazing time with cool technologies and intellect and all this stuff. It's like, people talk about crime and stuff like that. Like, crime is the smallest it's been in the history of the world.
Right.
We're shown the bad stuff, so it looks big, but go out there, be aware of your surroundings, and you'll realize that life isn't so bad. It's actually really good.
Well, and no, I think we're in the best time ever because, since the early, before the 90s, in the 90s, I want to say there was like 600 different media companies that owned the media. Then Bill Clinton passed some deregulation thing, and now it's 4 or 5 companies own 90% of the media.
Yeah.
But that's the mainstream media. When you look at, the movie studios and all the television networks. But now we have like these podcasts and stuff on the internet. And we have more free access to information than I think we've had in such a long time that we don't have to believe the Sean Hannitys and the Rachel Maddows of the world. We don't have to take Fox News or fucking MSNBC or CNN or fuck all networks, at their word. We can go research shit. Now, granted, in researching some of these things, like, they definitely do a pretty good job of scrubbing a lot of shit from the internet, but you can still find it. And, if it's something you're interested in, I recommend it. If it's not, then don't, but just know that if you are confronted with a crisis of faith of some sort, try to put a positive spin on it. And I would just say, people are humans. Humans are flawed. But, put your effort into making your life better and those around you better and your community better. And don't waste too much energy on shit you can't affect and can't change. Focus on the stuff you can. And
it's kind of funny. I equate this all to being a parent. Like, when you're growing up and you look at your dad as this, like, godly, know everything authority. And I'm not saying that they weren't, but when you become a parent, you're like, oh God, I don't know shit, but somebody is looking at you as you are. So, and that's I'm not, some people can't have kids. I'm not saying that you can't understand this if you don't have, I'm not saying that at all. But it's just same thing as if you grow up and you're like, wow, I'm 36, 37 years old and I still feel like I'm 17. Like, there's a lot of people that feel that way.
Yep.
And a lot of people in power that feel that way. So, because you may feel inferior in some way, shape, or form, doesn't mean that person in power feels superior.
It's true.
And that's one of those things is you kind of you almost have to feel sorry for some of these guys because it's a whole nother rabbit hole of getting down into like human relations and stuff like that.
Well, and they're relying on other people to give them a lot of the information and advice, and like, who knows? There's just so many different. Yeah,
there's so many ways to dissect it, but
exactly. But you know what? Focus on what's important. Focus on what's around you. Focus on the shit you control.
Try to make your little bubble a better place.
Yeah, take a page out of Sam Tripoli's book. Be a Ronin, and don't put implicit trust or don't blindly follow anybody that you don't know personally.
Yeah. That's actually,
That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, this was a good episode. I'm glad we talked about this because
I dig it.
Yeah, I think whoever listens to this will get some good vibes from it, hopefully.
Or we'll just put them into a tailspin and give them a fucking mental crisis of some sort.
There's that too.
But hey, if that's the case, email us. We'll try to fix you. Project X Reclamation.
We'll give you a digital hug.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, That's all I got.
Sweet. Same here. All right, y'all. Be good.
Bye.
So what I believe you were trying to say is thank you.